Yeah, we're live. It is 7:28, so just a skosh late. Not too bad. Hopefully everyone's doing good. Some fingerprints or something on my glasses there. Hopefully everyone's doing good. Tonight we're going to talk about the video I posted today. It is the small block 400. The other guy is small block, and actually, we should talk about that tonight. There are a lot of other guys small blocks, and by that we just mean that there are small blocks that are not nearly as popular. Some are obviously famous and some are used extensively. So if I go to the wrecking yard, for instance, I'm not going to have trouble finding a 350. There's going to be lots and lots of those. More than likely, I'm not going to have trouble finding a 305. We can nitpick and get, am I going to find a crossfire injected 350? Yeah, we can talk about that, and that is kind of cool. But we don't usually get that nitpicky when we're talking about other guys' stuff. It's just unique things. So there are a lot. I think honestly that there are lots of other guys small block Chevys. The 350 is not one of them, obviously. The 305 I don't think is one of them. I don't even think that the 327 or the DZ 302, they have a long history of being famous and all that. So I don't think that that's it at all. But I think the 400 is, because it wasn't given much respect back in the day, because it was just basically a pedestrian, big cubic inch, full size, station wagon kind of motor. And it worked well for that. Anytime you add, we saw in the video that I did on the 302 versus a 327 versus the 350, we saw that as I stepped up in displacement, particularly from the 305 to the 350, now we did change camshafts a little bit because the LT1 cam is slightly milder than the DZ302 camshaft is. But we saw a huge change in displacement, despite the fact that we have very common things, intake manifold, carburetor, cylinder heads, So we would expect to see that same thing going from 350 to 400. So we would expect to see, like we saw 70, 80, 90 foot-pounds of torque in some spots going from the LT1 from the DZ302. Might we see that going, 50 cubic inches is a lot. So might we see, similar kinds of gains? I know we're going to see at least 1 foot-pound per cubic inch. 50 is the very minimum that we're going to see. So depending on how we outfit each one of them, that's going to determine how much extra torque we see. So if the thing is making 1.3 foot-pounds per cubic inch, which is not unheard of, it's a good amount, but it's not unheard of. So, if we make the motor bigger, just, good things start to happen, especially down low in the torque area where everybody wants it. So if you have a small block Chevy and you want to use it as your towing vehicle for a truck or something, having a 400, you got lots of extra torque there compared to a 350 or any of the other small blocks for that matter. And then you could, like we did with this one, you could even accessorize it, do a top end on it so that it makes lots and lots of power. In this case, this one had a lot of stuff thrown at it. It had a really good oiling system, the Moroso oiling system. I just put a casual text mention in the video, but it had a good oiling system and had a windage tray and stuff on it. It even had a billet pump, which was very, very cool. Although the pressure was very, very high. We had 100 PSI of oil pressure. Those billet pumps really work. But the pan was good. Like I said, the windage tray, all of that stuff was awesome. It had really good heads. It had 225 Dart Pro 1s on it. They were CNC ported. So they flowed over 300 CFM. They were good heads. And we had a good intake manifold on the Dart. So we had an interesting test between the Dart and at the time it was Pro Comp. I think that this might have been before Speedmaster, but it's Speedmaster now. So that single plane, we see a variation in different single planes. The Speedmaster one made more low speed power, and then the Dart one made more power on the top. We could have tried, instead of the 950, we could have tried 1,000 CFM carburetor, or maybe a Dominator style. Once we get into the 600 horsepower deal, even on the small blocks, I like to look at Dominators just to kind of see what happens. So there's definitely more there, and it was a 264 at 50 camshaft, if I remember right, on the solid roller from the Bullet camshaft, which did very well. All the LSA guys could see, it's 110. Well, you could have made a lot more power if it's 105 or 106 or whatever the number is. There's obviously more power to be had there. But I like that combination. It did very well, and it also did very well doing other things besides this NA combination. So we made 620 or something with it, NA, but then it also did, it was run with an 871. It was run with nitrous. It was run with a Vortec. It was run with all kinds of stuff. So, you know, the old adage that if we start with lots of power and then we add some power adder to it, we're going to end up with more power. That holds true. So we start with over 600 and we add a 200 shot, that's going to be over 800. Same thing with the 871. Put the 871 on there. It can support, we know that 871 can support 4-digit power levels. I think we only took it into the mid eights or something with that one. And then the Vortec, we spun it up pretty good. So, and made over 1,000 horsepower. So that small block was actually pretty good. And it's cool because it's a 400 and it's not a 350 or even a 383, which is also good. But a lot of guys, when I posted the video on, you know, how to make more torque, it was how to make more torque essentially starting from a 350, because that's really the start motor for most small block stuff. Well, the first thing you do is make it bigger, you make it a 383. But a lot of guys pointed out, well, why didn't you just go to 400? And the reason, and I covered this also in the video, is that 400s are really hard to come by. I'm gonna go ahead and move this out here. So my number one fan. 400s are hard to come by. I don't remember. I mentioned this in the video. I don't ever remember seeing one in a wrecking yard. Maybe I would need to look close, but I haven't ever seen any. But some other. So you guys can let me know some other guys small blocks. You know, we got lots of small ones. We got like the little L99, all of the 262s and 263s and 265s. I think that those kind of certainly qualify. On the Ford side, the 221 on the Ford definitely qualifies for that kind of stuff. Even a 260 would kind of qualify, but definitely the 221. Now, that doesn't mean that you should go build one unless you think it's cool to have a 221. I would be more likely to want a car that originally had a 221 and make it a 421, but say that it's a 221 or make it look like the 221. That would be kind of cool. A 221 is obviously not going to make very much power on the Ford side. And then the smaller motors are not going to make, you know, we've seen that they're just not going to make the power that a bigger motor does. But nonetheless, it's still fun to build those because it's, you know, because it's kind of cool. So we do need a poll for tonight. Okay, who would pick a 400 over a 350 for a towing application? Seems like a very simple poll to me, but we'll see what people say. Yeah, dirt trackers grabbed all the 400. That's true. The racing guys knew. We're live. Yes, we are. Alan Wrenchinator. Richard, I have an idea. When we get caught up and need a new engine for a new series, we should put 5 or 6 engines that haven't been on the channel on one of the spinning wheel apps. Just do that's what we did on the Wheel of Death, but our Wheel of Death was picking the way that it was going to die. It was kind of fun. Oldsmobile for 403 testing. Good evening, everyone. Been a while since I caught a live chat. Hot mess. What's going on? 400 versus a 383. That's not really much of a competition, I don't think. It's one of them is bigger by 17 inches. 400s have cooling issues. That's easily cured, and it was easily cured on this aftermarket block that we had. A stovepipe Chevy inline 6, a 3.6 Pentastar, random mod motors, a J series, a Toyota V8. Again, start with something good and you can add more horsepower. That's right. The TA I did a while back was an Olds 403. I have actually seen one of those in the wrecking yard. I have seen one Trans Am in the wrecking yard, or at least the one that I go to most often over by Westech, and it was definitely an Oldsmobile motor. So I'm sure that it was a 403. Put that 400 up against an LS3. This 400 makes a lot more than an LS3 does. Please explain to me how you get 1,000 CFM from 1 3/4 throttle blades. That's the largest base plate you can have, and a 4150 carb. Why is that the largest blade? Do they touch after that? High RPM turbo 327. More power plus power adder equals more power. it's really pretty simple math. I don't like I don't like to go out on a limb on my math quotes. Will you be testing Hooker small block Chevy exhaust manifolds? I'm not familiar with those. Do they make some sort of cast replacement exhaust manifolds? What about a 327? I have 327 videos up. I've run both the L76 and the L84, the 365 horse 327 and the 375 horse 327 fuel injected versions. I have videos up on those. Are splayed mains worth adding to a two bolt 400? What is it you're trying to do with the 400? My guess is that part of it is not going to be the limitation of the block. In New Zealand, pre-65 and Appendix J 221 engines are used on occasion. Used in what? It obviously not anymore, right? I mean, not in anything new. I'll take a 396 over 400. See, I would agree with that. I think a 396 big block makes more power than a 400 small block does, only because it has much better cylinder heads. I had a lot of fun and grief building a Buick Rover 215. Was that the aluminum motor? Richard, I have a 6-liter with professionally ported 799 heads and the truck Norris cam. Is it worth it to swap to Ascast 823 rec port heads? If the 799 heads are properly ported, they already flow as much or more than the 823s, and they make more power. So if you take a look at the test that I did on the 823s versus the Trick Flow 225 heads, which is about what your 799, if they're ported correctly, that's about the power that they'll make. At a 76 K20 with a 400 combo. I wish I had never had to sell the truck. So 400 turbo 400 trans. A 232 Studebaker. It's a t-shirt idea. More power plus more power. I have two 400s at the machine shop right now. 1 2-bolt, 1 4-bolt. So is it a factory 4-bolt 400? I would imagine that's got to kind of be on the rare side. My dad sprayed a 300 shot on his 400 and his Nova for 4 years, going through a bottle a week. Nice. Yeah, a 400 shot would go through a bottle pretty fast. I snagged a BTR shaft rocker system for my 823 heads. Been out of stock for ages and found the seller on Marketplace. Okay. Because they have the offset rocker on them because it's an LS3 head. We need an engine on this channel to hit 10,000 RPM on the dyno. That's not high on the list. Uncle Tony was comparing Magnum versus LA as an LS speeder. A Magnum and an LA motor are not even in the same league as an LS. Tony would. I don't think that he thinks that. I think he's a smarter guy than that. There's no way that you would think that that's the case. It starts off 100 horsepower less, so it's got a pretty tall hill to climb. Is anyone looking for a 69 307 small block Chevy that came in an FX or A body? Robert, can you tell me two things? What should lift cam do you suggest 4.8 crank and a 6.0, and how's the best way to get adjustable rockers? First of all, I don't recommend adjustable rockers on an LS. You should use stock rockers. They're the best thing that you could put in there, even for an 8,000 RPM thing. If you're, I would want to know why you're de-stroking the 6 liter, what you're trying to get done. The thing that you're trying to get done is going to dictate the camshaft. And lift is not the thing that you would be thinking about. You would be thinking about duration first, and then lift would be an afterthought. So this is always the same answer. You just need to tell me how much power you want to make and what you're using it for, and we can kind of get you steered in the right direction. K-Series Honda, 10,000 RPM. Yeah, stock one's not going to go there, though. Hooker's claiming they support 500 horsepower with a stock exhaust manifold. Well, you can make lots of power with stock exhaust manifolds. So they don't choke the power off like some people think. They just make less getting there. So it takes more stuff to get there than it does with headers. I'd like to see some testing on early Chrysler 8 Series engines or the mid-50s Poly engines. Buick 215, Fairlanes and Falcon, small block Chevy 400 versus an LS 416. You don't have to use a 416. You could just make a 400 small LS if you wanted to do that. Shaquille, what's the weak point on which engine on this 400? I don't think that the cylinders, and I don't think the block itself is strong enough for. I don't think you could do with the 400 block, even if you put 4-bolt mains in it, if it didn't already have them. I don't think you could do with that block what you do with an LS block. An iron LS block. I don't think you would want to run a 400 small block at 1,500 horsepower, 1,500 plus horsepower. .350 small block Chevy D-stroke to 302, revving to 10,000 would be doable. Okay. I don't know why you have to de-stroke it, but okay. .57 versus 6-inch rod and a factory 400. Yes, you can use either one of those. When is the 3800 Big Bang? I don't know. I don't have a date for that. Let's see. Would a 185 heads hurt power quite a bit compared to 225s if a small cam like a 218 at 50 was used? Say there's similar quality like AFRs. On what motor are you talking about? On a 302, they're not going to hurt it at all. On a 502, they probably will. Built 2 different small blocks, one for a street rod and one for a truck in the 80s. Both ran well, different in camshaft and intake, no cooling issues. I flowed hundreds of 4150 carbs, and the best one I've seen flowed 856 wet. Barry Grant was the one that started the dry flow stuff to sell more carbs. You need to subtract 8% for fuel. There's a competition in air-cooled Porsche world to build the ultimate driver's car, and a well-known builder came out with an air-cooled 911 that revs to 11,000, 350 horsepower, 3.1 liter. I would honestly think, and I mean, that's a fantastic thing, and that's cool that he did it, but an 11,000 RPM 3.1 liter motor is not going to be what I would want from a driver, because it's not going to have any torque. Buick Rover and Olds were aluminum. When's the 3800 Big Bang? We went through that. Someone needs to get you a 632. I've run the 632, not the GM one, but I've run 632s from Blueprint, I think, at Westech. Factory 4-bolt is not a good block. The outer main bolts break into the main webs and crack. The 2-bolt block is stronger. So Dave knows about 400 blocks, so you should listen to him. Super Richie mods. So on the Cup motors, on the NASCAR motors, they're making 358s. What stroke did they use in those? A 5.4 modular versus a 327 Chevy versus a 318 Dodge. So are you wanting to do that just because you think that they're close in displacement? Because they're from completely different eras. Hang my leg out of the covers. Is that's your thermostat, right? That's for cooling. Would you gain anything by switching to a stainless custom header over log style on a single turbo 5.3? I don't know. You have to tell me. You have to show me exactly which ones you're talking about, but probably not. But at some power level, you would. Like when we run the Big Bang one, and if we were running the stock truck manifolds, which I use all the time for turbo stuff, I think it would not make as much power at the same boost level as it does with the tubular headers. But I don't think that comes into play until we're trying to make 1,500 horsepower. Reloading, I meant to ask 185s versus 225s on the 400 small block. A 185 in this combination would bring the power down on this 400, but not with a small camshaft. 5.4 modular versus a 5.3. I already have that up. 5.7 versus a 5.7 Hemi. Do you see that Cletus got the Coyote thing fired up? Yeah, I saw that. They were trying to beat the storm, right? Connecting rods are smaller on the 400s. Yep, smaller than a 350 is. Yep. You're asking about performance of 5.7 versus 6.0 rods. I've only done one test. Well, I've done 3 tests on small block Chevys with a 5.7 and a 6.0 rod. I did it on a 302 and a 327 and a 350, and there was no change in power going by changing the rod. By changing the rod length, because I had to go from a 6-inch rod down to a 5.7 because everybody lost their mind that I had used 6-inch rods in the build just because that's what we had to put together at the time so that I could get the pistons that were available to get the dome that we needed to make the 302 be 11-1 and the 327 be 11-1 and the 350 be 11-1 at the time. That's what I had to play with. And so we did that. And then the Chevy guys lost their mind. Oh, the 6-inch rod's going to change that. That's not even real. It's going to change the power. And I told Camposano, who was the editor at the time, I said, Camposano, it's not going to make any difference. I said, I'd be surprised if we even see anything. I said, we may not see anything at all. I said, but I'll go through the trouble of doing it. And I did it, and there was no change. And I take that back. I only did it on one of them. I think I only did it on the 350. I didn't do it on the other two. I think I told them I'm not doing it on the other two. I take the 400 2-bolt block and dowel pin the center 3 caps. You can make 650 all day when you do that. Strength-wise, splayed 4 bolts into a 2-bolt 400 block would be stronger bottom end. Yeah, that's what Dave is saying. It'd be stronger than a 2-bolt and stronger than a factory 4-bolt. The air-cooled NA RS and close 4 guys are different. A ton of torque is anything over 260 foot-pounds at the flywheel. 356 guys get mad at guys with lots of power. I like 356s. I like speedsters even better. And I do like RS and club sport stuff. But that's what I mean. It's not. Those are like an 11,000 RPM 3.1 liter Porsche engine is a race motor. That's not a like street motor. Let's see. The 542 valve against the 327. What is this? A stock 462 valve was a 260 horsepower. That the non-PI one. So a PI 462 valve won't make what that 327 made, but a 5.4 might do that. On high output blocks, which manufacturers will be worth adding a girdle. What engine family are you talking about? Let's see. Oh, the thing just freaked out for a second. Reloading. All right, great. It's easier to find 185s with 72cc chambers. Yeah, with a 218 cam, you're not going to be giving up too much. I want to build a new 460 for my Lincoln Mark IV. Yeah, Seth, take a look at the 460 things I did. I did some mild cams on that. .57 LS versus .57 Hemi versus a 5.4 Ford replacement for displacement video. You need boost to make more power per inch. Oh, you don't need more power? How much cam can you get away with and pass emissions in Colorado on an LS3? I don't have the answer to that because I don't know. Technically, you can't put a camshaft in there and still pass emissions unless they have an emissions legal cam. Porsche made a 356. Was it a V8? Porsche did make a V8. They made some good ones. Is a flat plane crank needed in something like an F1 car? Well, are they even running V8s in Formula One now? $11,000 RPM cars in the seven figures. Yeah, nothing that says Porsche on it is ever cheap, right? Ford modular dyno. Well, let's see. So a stock 4.6 2-valve non-PI motor made 266 horsepower and 342 foot-pounds of torque with headers on it. A Buick 464 made 587 horsepower, 572 foot-pounds with head flow numbers 319 and 215. Having them level 4 ported, and flow numbers are now 350 and 240. So you're wanting to make more power? Are you wanting to make more? Are you going to keep the same camshaft and just go up in head flow and see what happens? 587 with almost 320 CFM of flow, you have more left there. And judging by how close your horsepower and torque number are, that Buick is not a very wild combination. Does it have a dual plane on it or something? Probably not. $292 versus a 300 Ford. But aren't those completely different generations, though? I mean, isn't the Ford way later than the 292 Chevy? PI 54 is advertised at 260. Yeah, I'm not talking about the advertised number. I'm just talking about the what it made when I ran it. What are the best size heads you recommend for a high performance street 421 small block Chevy profile or AFR? How much power are you trying to make? So I would recommend for an LQ4 stock 9.4 to 1 rock bouncer. So I want to be small enough but not choke the motor up and still have good mid range. Is it everything else on the motor stock then? You could do the GT45 and that would give you enough for 700, but it would also make 700 foot-pounds. A 400 Ford versus a Mopar 400. I think the 400M 400 Ford guys lose their mind. 400M, which, and I told people, I said, I will call the 400 a 400M and not just the 351M. I will call the 400M a 400M from now, from forever. That motor against a small block Chevy 400, I think would be a good thing because they have comparable eras. They have comparable head flow and mild cam timing and various issues. I like the way the 928 motors look, especially the later ones. F1 runs turbo V6 hybrids now. Okay. I haven't kept up. We've done a lot of work with inline six motors. Quick synopsis compared to a V8. Do you want the history of them or what is it you want? But both of them can make power. One of them isn't inherently better than the other. The bigger motor of either one of those will make more torque. Seth, on the 460, the first cam that we ran was like some kind of RV cam, so that had near stock idle quality anyway. Perfect timing on this video, picking up a square body with a 400 in on Friday. See, nice. And does anybody know if they did they even make a factory 4-barrel 400 or were they all 2 barrels? A 408 928 would be an excellent daily driver, especially if you did, like I would do an all aluminum one. I think that would be cool. But those are transaxles though, right? Somebody said, I think that they would like to see a Ford V10. Yeah, me too. I guess they're using 1.6 liter 90-degree V6s with a flat plane. Red says they use a flat plane because it's light and it revs easier. I wonder if it's absolutely necessary to have. I would be surprised about the weight. Usually Formula One stuff is done. I mean, they do everything for weight, but they also do it for packaging, for aero, and to get the thing down low to the ground. You actually made impressive power with the 400. This 400 worked good. Once you put a big cam in it and enough head flow and small block 400 with a Siamese bore is notorious for overheating. Is it? I get that stuff all the time. Every time I pick a new motor, like I pick a Cleveland, oh, you're gonna have oiling problems. Same thing with the Buick. Oh, you're gonna have oiling problems. You know, all of these things that people hear and parrot and say, hey, this happens on all of them, and then it never happens to me, with the exception of Calvin told me when you take the head off, you're gonna snap all the head bolts. I'm like, we got a pretty good system because yeah, you probably are gonna snap the head bolts, and then I snapped all of them. So that does happen. Yeah, the 32 valve 928, I agree, is really cool. And I like Porsche stuff. They do really cool induction systems. Ferrari also is really good at that. The 400 Chevy has a shorter stroke, it will rev faster. 4V Cleveland heads on the 400. Yeah, then it's a stroker Cleveland, right? Do, 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 do. .292 went from 63 to 90, and Ford was made from 65 to 96. Did the 292 ever have fuel injection on it? Have you seen the intake design on the late 928s? Throttle body under the plenum with endless vacuum connections. I haven't seen it. Thought the 400M had Cleveland style heads. It does. It has 2V heads on it, but they need 4V heads. I have a van. It has a small block. It's a factory 4-barrel. Okay, I keep meaning to look that up whenever we were talking about 400s because I want to see what the highest power rating was. .400 Chevy combo I like to build. This is from Dave. You should listen because he's a racer guy. See if his handle's even Racer D. Uses an offset ground crank for a 3950 stroke. You use a Honda 1890 6-inch rod. No clearance problems. You get 427 cubic inches and a very light rotating assembly. That doesn't pull the piston down out of the bottom. Not with this. Not with a 6-inch rod length. But what piston do you use? Is it some sort of short skirt deal? My first truck was a 76 short wheelbase step-side with a 400 and a Q-Jet. Cool. Lots of 4-barrel 400s and 3/4 ton trucks. Would a cross plane crank rev just as much? Yeah, you don't see any well, I mean, it's you can't beat Formula One for for RPM potential. Banks has bolt-ons for the V10, probably headers, right, and air intakes and things. Factory 928 engine is 600 pounds. That's crazy. Why is it so heavy? Isn't a 928 engine an all aluminum engine? Why do people think flat plane cranks are light? Need more balance because everyone's telling them flat plane cranks, rev, you know. Everything will be stock except cam and intake, which should be very mild truck cam, more likely LS6 intake, stock 317 heads. A GT45 would light up really early on a 6-liter, especially if you're putting mild cam and a long runner intake manifold on it. Yeah, Dean, my 4-barrel question was actually for the 400s Chevy small block, not for the Ford. high nickel 400s, 509 block was a motor to build, all motor back in the day, 11 to 1 or more, and some avgas, 150 shot. $4,200 timing chain is a pain. It is. Is it a pain if everything is disassembled? Like the whole front cover is off? Duran, you're trying to. Why wouldn't you just use ported stock heads? Like ported LT1 or LT4 heads. My grandpa had a 1975 Chevy 1-ton pickup with a 404 barrel. See? Camaro, can a 350 be resleeved for 400 pistons? I don't know. I would think that it would be. I don't think very many people sleeve 350 blocks because they're a dime a dozen. But if you sleeved them and bored it that far, wouldn't they be touching? Wouldn't they be Siamese? Small block 400, Isky solid roller, and some Dart 202s. I missed the tech talk about the LS7. I have one and know about the head issues. Do you have any recommendations for a fix? Yeah, did yours break? I mean, did you drop seats or break? What happens to them? Do the seats come out or do the guides go bad? Andrew, my question to you is, why are you fixated on 12 pounds? What does that number do for you? I don't know that 12 pounds will 12 pounds will happen somewhere. Maybe not at the power peak. That would be the limit of that would be near the limit of the turbo. I know it's kind of off topic. Well, there's no topic here. What would be better for an all-out nitrous build, a 6-liter or a 408 stroker? The 408 stroker will make more power with nitrous because it's going to start out making more power than a 6-liter does. So if you put good heads on it and a camshaft like you would on a 6-liter, the 408 is going to make more power, and then you're just going to add nitrous on top of that. Just your think about it as building a building. So I'm building my building up this high, and then I have this much that I'm going to add every time. And wherever you start with, you add that much. How tall is your building get? So a 408 is going to start out making more, and it's going to end up making more. Is there any problem with stroking the 6-liter LS? No, most people do, like out of an iron block, most people put a 4-inch stroke in it and then make a 408 out of it. You do 30 over, and you make a 408. The Chevy 6 got multi-port EFI in Brazil in the 90s as a 250. Okay. I thought a 250 was a different engine family. My 427 small block is 9.3 to 1. I only have 1 or 2 more minutes, guys. I think I have to go. Let's see. Maybe not. Let's see. 427 small block, 9.3 to 1 deck, raised cam, big block Chevy, cam cores, spread pan rails, AFR 245, 704 lift. F2 Pro are on E85. Yeah, that sounds like it's going to be on an F2. So that's what's going to determine the power then. Any truth to the 2 to 3 freeze plug block strength question? I don't know. I don't know if that's a real thing. Maybe Dave might know a little bit more about that. Porsche 44, 46, 5, 54. It's a big block, has a Hemi 426 Mercedes-Benz 6.9 bore spacing. That's why it's so heavy. Oh, okay. I remember, I think it was one of the guys brought, trying to remember his name now. He brought in a big block with 928 heads on it. Trying to remember the guy's name. Thank you for playing our game. You talk about all these dinos and we don't get any dino testing. It's kind of lame. Okay. Then you don't got to come. It's real simple. Stumbled on a 3800 compound supercharger turbo video. Makes me curious how compounding a turbo on a 4.6 Ford running an M90 intercooled kit they make would be for power. It does the same thing. I mean, we ran the 4.6 4 valve with the 112 on it with 2 turbos on it, and we did the did compound boost with that, and then did the blower, and then did the turbos, and did the compound boost with all of that. The aluminum LT1 heads can be used with a 4-barrel intake manifold. I don't know if anybody does anybody have a carbureted intake for the LT stuff? I really want to run under 14 pounds of boost. Yeah, you're going to have to. You're going to have no choice but to do that because that turbo is not going to support. That motor is going to make like 425, and at 14 pounds, you're going to be over 800 horsepower, and it's just that turbo won't support that. I'd like to see a small block 400 Chevy versus a 408 351. You don't have to do a 408. You can actually do closer to 400. 351 Windsor Stroker. I think Engine Masters did that. I think that they did 400-inch Ford Chevy, and they might have done a Ford Chevy and a Dodge. I think that they were all pretty close. Camaro, did you see Brian converted the DI to port ejection? Yeah, we talked about that. That was long ago, but it is cool stuff. Racer D, oh, you got to see a 63 Tempest with a Trophy 4 in it. I need, if you know of anybody, I need the factory 4-barrel manifold, a factory 4-barrel manifold for the Trophy 4. I'm having a hard time finding one, and there's a number of different versions available, but I'll take anyone. LS valves break and destroy the block. Some say seat and guides are not concentric, or the titanium against the guides or the hollow stem. Okay. Watch the C6L3 Vortec blown canned up street driven car run 9 to 137. Past emissions, maybe use the 525 horse. I mean, getting it to pass a sniffer test, that's not hard to do. There are lots of things that will make it, and it will still do that, but you're not talking about doing that, at least not according to the emissions laws. Hot mess, thank you. eBay GT45 is good for like 750. Yeah, it's going to be in the 750-ish range. Have you ever thought about running an F20B or H22 stuff? I haven't. I mean, I have back in the day. I did a testing with Oscar Jackson when he was doing blowers for the Preludes and things like that. Not an F20B, but definitely H-series stuff, the 22s and 23s. I may have even included that in one of my Honda books, but I haven't run any of them on the engine dyno. Does anybody know what the difference in weight is for a small block LS and a regular small block? The iron blocks. I think the SF95 is a good drift chassis. Okay. So a short video of a Mustang 2 that had 3 blowers stacked up in twin turbos. What is that? Some kind of pro street thing? We can bench race, then test. It's better to just bench race. You can just make it all up. I wondered if the actual reason an F1 engine revs so high and lives is attributed more to the 3.15 by 2.066 bore and stroke than the crank design. I think you're looking at the wrong thing. The reason that they're running the RPM that they're running is because they're limiting them at that RPM. They would run more RPM, and they can run more RPM. They can essentially run unlimited. They could run 20,000 RPM if they would let them. And they'll keep making power if they do, because what they found out long ago in Formula One, until they started adding all of these electric assist things, is that they figured out that at least on the NA applications, is they kind of found like a specific torque plateau. They're like, these motors are going to kind of be in this range right here. And what we need to do now is we need to have them say, okay, we can make that torque, but now can we make that torque at 12,000 RPM, 15,000 RPM, 20,000 RPM? Because if you do, and you still have that torque, you're making a lot more horsepower if you push the RPM out. So they would continue to run the RPM. And then that's just a function of, like, the short block part of it, getting that to rev, that's not usually a big problem. Getting the valve train to work, that's more of a problem. Less on an overhead cam deal, but still it becomes problematic at those kind of engine speeds. Richard, do LS engines have a danger zone with high RPMs? Does stroking a motor make the danger zone drop lower in RPM? I think you're looking at it wrong. I think the reason that most people make bigger motors is because they don't have to rev high. You can make the power, like if you want to make 600 horsepower, it's a lot easier to do that with a 408, and it's going to happen at 6,500 RPM or somewhere near there. Whereas if you try to make 600 horsepower with a 4.8, it's going to be 8,000 RPM because it doesn't draw in as much air with each stroke. It doesn't do that. So it has to do it at a much higher engine speed. So you have to do that. You're not limiting yourself by making the engine bigger. You're actually helping yourself. Anybody need a small block Mopar Edelbrock Torquer? Got one used. Dual plane on a street driven 360. Let's see here. SM95 Cobra R with a 351 Windsor was underrated. The Cobra compounded with twins would be a lot different, I would imagine, than a 462 valve with an M90 kit and a single. Yeah, they didn't ever. Ford never offered the 2 valve with the blower on it, right? I mean, Saleen and other guys did, I think, but not Ford. Jonathan, your power adder choice for which one you want to add your LS is going to be a function of how much power you want to make. A turbo will make more than the nitrous will. The nitrous is easier and it's easy to put on, and a nitrous gets less expensive than putting a turbo on. So if you want to add another 100 horsepower or even 150 or let's say 200, you can do that fairly easily with nitrous, and it's temporary, and you have to fill it, and there's an expense of filling the bottle. You have all of that stuff. With a turbo, you could double the power output if you wanted to do that. The turbo is certainly capable of doing that if you have the tune and all that stuff right. So ultimately, it comes down to where do you want to go to? Jim, I don't know how guys at the shops check them. Like at the machine shop, I don't know what they do. I thought somebody was telling me, and I can't remember now if this was the LS7 or if it was the Hemi. I thought some guys were telling me that the press was not accurate on the guides. I'd have to ask Brian. I know that the guides are coming out of the Hemi stuff too, so maybe I'm confusing those two, but I would have to ask him and see. I think they're limited to 16,000 RPM now. I'm pretty sure they use pneumatic valve trains. My 455 Olds is making 600 horsepower, around 5,500. Should do the Hellion style 4V. That's what we were just talking about at 112 with twins on it. We did that with the guys at HP Performance, but we did the blower, did the turbo, and then did the blower and the turbo, and just the turbos are the best. Jim, so you made 430 horsepower, 450 foot-pounds. That's nice. Is this a 383? Why should I put a 50 shot on the twin charge motor? Why does it need that? Just didn't want all the added expenses and underhood mess for 150 horsepower. Yeah, 150 horsepower nitrous thing is really easy to do, and nobody even really sees it. Blower with the turbo spools faster. It does, because instead of a 300 horsepower motor, it's a 400 horsepower motor spooling the turbos, but then it gets in the way. More power adders are more better. Oh, so you want turbos and blower and nitrous? Because then it'd be all pro street, right? Then it definitely would be all pro street. All at once or one at a time? Well, they would all be working, right? I mean, at some point, if you hit the nitrous, the turbos would be spooled up. The blower would be working as it always is, and then the nitrous would be working. Why not add different types of superchargers? You mean are you talking about the 3800, Adrian? Thanks for the insight. Apparently anyone can make the sniff test pass. I don't know if that's the takeaway, but whatever you're going to do, you're going to go do, I guess. Jim, you got 450 foot-pounds of torque on a 350 with a Duntov cam in it? And what heads did those aren't, they're not Vortec heads, right? It seems like a really high torque number for that. That Duntov cam is not a very good cam. Who would pick the 400 over a 350? 85% are saying yes. One more minute. You're swapping a 5.3 into a car. Would you go to the third gen Camaro or an E36? Yes, both of those are good choices. Made you a plate to bolt to the little supercharger. Sent you a text with a picture. Okay, Scott, cool. I'll take a look at it. Have you seen the Thompson Performance Carb Squirters? Those are the little hats that they put over it. Those have been tested. P38s are cool. Definitely cool. Would water meth or a small shot of nitrous be better to spool turbo? I don't think water meth is going to do anything except hurt it, but nitrous definitely would. But your small shot of nitrous to spool a turbo, you want going directly into the intake. So with identical sized engines at the same RPM span, the higher horsepower version spins a turbo faster. The one that makes the most low speed power spools the turbo faster. Spool rate has nothing to do with peak horsepower, because by the time you reach peak horsepower, the turbo's well into spool. The thing that you're concerned with is when you're hitting the throttle. If you're hitting the throttle at 2,000 RPM, the only thing you care about is what is the NA torque output at 2,000 RPM. That's what's going to determine how fast the turbo spools up. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. Please go watch the video that I just posted on the 400s. 400s, cool stuff, right? But I'm mostly excited about the little supercharger. I was talking to Brian Tooley about it today. He said, "Really? What? What is that? Why are you doing this? This doesn't really seem like a good idea. It doesn't seem like good use of your time." I said, "Yeah, but it's like awesome." It's like, okay, I have a business that I have to go run. He just runs off and is making money while I'm trying to make supercharger noises. That's the difference. And I will see you guys all tomorrow.